All right. Well, Elijah, it might just be me and you today. I don't know. Amber may pop on in just a little bit. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. So we're gonna go into Canvas. Remember, let me get the student view. Remember, you can click on modules or today's activities. And we're going to go to Thursday. And we're going to do the bell ringer, but I want to talk a little bit about Friday. Friday, we don't have Google Meets, but you'll get on Canvas and you'll do the bell ringer and submit it. And right now, what we get started on the food web activity, you're going to finish that. And then you can go back and work on anything you haven't submitted from this week, if there's anything that's missing. So that'll be tomorrow. Fridays, we don't do Google Meets, you just go on and do the work. So let's do the bell ringer first. So we have 3 questions here. And we're going to click on Submit Assignment so I can get my text box. And I mentioned it yesterday. It was not in the notes, but I mentioned where we get all the energy comes from originally. And that is the sun. So any energy that we get from food originally comes from the sun. So we're going to type in sun for number 1. And from, let's see, what was that? Oh, okay. Hey, Alex. We're doing the bell ringer.
Okay.
Number 1 is sun. Number 2, what is the only molecule that directly powers your body with energy? And that's the molecule we talked about yesterday. It has 3 letters for its initials. It's ATP. And then the energy is released from an ATP molecule for a cell to use when what happens? So from yesterday, that would be when the bond breaks between the second and third phosphate. So this is worth 3 extra credit points. So 3 questions. Here's the answers. I'm going to give just a few more seconds for you to get that typed in or jot it down somewhere so you can type it in later. Able to mute, please. All right, you guys got those 3 typed in?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna click submit. Now, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna do some notes, and so this is pretty simple. If you can maybe pull out your tabs so that they're side by side, and you can look at the Google Meet and then have the notes over to the side. Again, if you want to get the Google Meet app on your phone, you can always go to the Google Meet on your phone and then have your Chromebook where you can type. So we're going to do energy flow notes today. And so the way I'm presenting, I can't demonstrate this, but let me stop presenting for a moment and present with my whole screen so maybe you can see what I'm talking about. If you will pull out your notes tab, whoops, like this, and kind of make it smaller. And then you can have your Google over here, and then you can type and still see the Google the Google Meet over here. So if you have a way of, that's one thing you can do. It's just going to be a little bit smaller on your Chromebooks. So you can do that. I'm gonna put it back over here for me. So we're gonna go, and I'm gonna make this bigger, and I'm gonna talk through the slides. If you don't fill this in while I am going through it, you need to then, you can have it here and fill in the notes, and you can go through the slides later. But remember, you've got to submit these things so that you can get your credit for being present today. So I'm gonna make it big so it's hopefully a little easier to see. So we talked about ATP yesterday, and ATP is our energy molecule. It's how our body, our cells get energy. And so today we're gonna look at how that energy kind of flows through ecosystems, and we need to kind of know how we get our energy, where it comes from, and that sort of thing.
Are these notes for today?
Yes. I'll go back a minute. If you will go under today's, I didn't put the cute little emojis on there, so it's gonna say energy flow notes under Thursday. So right here. So we did the bell ringer already, and then here's the notes, which I was on. And then we're gonna talk about that. So, let me go back here. I always put some vocabulary there, so if you wanna look at that, you can. So all our energy ultimately comes from the sun, because that is where the energy comes from. And we're gonna learn Monday that plants will take this energy for us and convert it into glucose, into food, so that when we consume plants or animals, we're getting some of that energy. So, kind of ways that we get energy. We have organisms that are called producers. They're also called autotrophs, so you need to be familiar with these two terms. And they get energy from non-living sources, so they do not consume any of their food. They produce it, they make it. These are going to be your plants. So from non-living sources, they're going to get it, they're going to be using sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to make, through photosynthesis, simple sugars. And organisms that do this are your plants, your algae, and some bacteria will do that. So always there's going to be producers kind of at the bottom of the food chain. Then we have consumers. These are heterotrophs. They have to consume, they have to eat something to get their energy. So that source of food is either going to be something that's living or once living, because we have some organisms, some bacteria, some fungus that will feed off of decaying organisms. So either living or once living. And this is going to be your animals, your fungus, people, anything that has to consume their food. It falls under consumers or heterotrophs. So autotrophs, heterotrophs. So those are the two columns at the front, or at the top of your notes there. All right, then we have this Venn diagram here. So you would label one side photosynthesis and one side chemosynthesis. And so here are two ways that producers can get their energy. So for photosynthesis, Well, both of them are going to use non-living sources to make it. So regardless, they both use non-living sources. Photosynthesis, the term photo is light. It is going to use sunlight. Where chemosynthesis, chemo means chemicals, they're going to use chemicals. Usually it's going to be sulfur, but it may be some other types of chemicals. So one example is sulfur-rich salt marshes. Examples for photosynthesis are green plants, something called cyanobacteria that uses sunlight. And here we've got deep sea vent bacteria. So in the ocean, deep in the ocean floor are these hypothermal vents that are bringing out hot water, and they are discovering that there are some bacteria that live in those vents and that use the chemicals from those vents to produce the food that they need. Let me go back a minute. So if you need just a minute to get that information in your Venn diagram. And if you skip something, you can go back up to the top of where the notes are and look in that in the slides there. So how are the consumers getting their energy? Well, of course, we have to eat other organisms, and that's a red panda, if you were wanting to know what that was. And once we eat whatever it is, the food that we're going to eat, the plant or the animal, our bodies is going to break down that food into macromolecules and then eventually go through cellular respiration to release ATP. So we talked about how ATP is created yesterday. Well, not fully created, but how that it has the third phosphate. That's the bond between the second and third is where the most energy is, and that ADP is recycled by continuously getting that third phosphate added and removed. And so we have 4 types of consumers. So there are herbivores. They're going to eat only vegetation. This would be like this little red panda here. It would be like cows, deer. Some humans choose to be vegetarians and eat only plant-based products, and so they could be considered an herbivore as well. Carnivores, they eat meat only, so they're going to be your meat eaters. Think about your lions. They're going to eat meat. Omnivores eat both. So many of us humans eat both. We eat meat and vegetables. And so those are the 3 main types. You need to be familiar with these. It should be a review. And then a new one here, detrivores. These are actually decomposers. This would be like your mushrooms, your fungus that are growing. It could be some bacteria. Anything that is going to come and feed off of decomposing living things that have died. All right, and we're not going to do that. We're going to move on. All right, food chains. So a food chain is linear. So here's an example. You have grass. The grasshopper feeds on the grass. The mouse feeds on the grasshopper. The owl feeds on the mouse. So you kind of go look at it in reverse to see who eats what. The arrow is just showing you which direction the energy is going. So in this, you're going to label some of the trophic areas, I believe. So trophic are levels. This is levels of nourishment in a food chain. Oops, I thought we were going to make sure you have that. That's up at the top. And so we have this rule about how energy flows through here. So it's called the rule of 10. So as you go through a food chain, the grass is going to contain the most energy. All right, and as you go up, you're only passing 10% of the energy to the next level. So not all of the energy is moving on because the organism has to use some of that energy for its living processes, and it gives some off in heat, and then 10% of it is passed to the organism that eats it. So over the 90%, other 90% of that energy is going to be used or lost as heat. So here is what thought we were at a while ago. So on your note sheet, you're going to label, these are producers, the grass. The grasshopper is what we call primary consumer because they are herbivores. They are going to eat the producers. The mouse is a secondary consumer because it's eating a herbivore. And then we have a tertiary consumer, which is eating a secondary consumer. And so you need to be familiar with these trophic levels here. But notice this is linear. You're only seeing one path. Are there other things that eat grasshoppers? Yes. Are there other things that eat mice? Yes. So we are going to look at food webs next because it's more complicated. It would be multiple food chains together. So the energy flow here is going that way. Each one gets 10%. So here's an example of a food web. Notice it's made up of multiple food chains. We can start at grass and go to this insect here, to the bird, to the owl. We could go from the grass, the grasshopper, the bird, the owl. You could go from grass straight to the mouse, to the owl. You could go to the whatever interesting little round worm that is. I think it's a grub worm. And then the mice eat the grub worm and go to the owl. So there's multiple food chains here, and you can see how they're interconnected. They all come back to the grass. So if we got rid of the grass, it would affect all these other organisms. So what we do to kind of model this is we put this information into a pyramid, and it's going to show how energy flows through an ecosystem. So, and what this does is it's showing that the energy you get as you get up the food chain or up the pyramid, and it becomes smaller and smaller. So when you're at the very top, it is you get the smallest amount. The numbers that we use are going to represent the number of organisms at each trophic level. Since energy decreases as you go up, you're fewer organisms that can be supported at that level. Then we have what is called a biomass pyramid, and it is going to show the total mass of living organic matter at each trophic level. We're more concerned about the energy pyramid. So here's an example. So fill this in on your note sheet. Here would be an example of an energy pyramid. So we have these numbers here are just numbering the trophic levels. Notice we always start at the bottom with 1 and then go up. The grass is the producer, so these are the trophic level names. The grasshopper is the primary consumer. The mouse is the secondary consumer. The owl is the tertiary consumer. And then you're going to usually see percentages. So the grass gets 100% of the energy. when the grasshopper eats the grass, he's only receiving 10% of that energy. When the mouse eats the grasshopper, it's only receiving 1% of that energy. And when the owl, is eating the mouse, it gets decimal 1%. So basically, you're dividing by 10 as you go up. I'm going to leave that there for a minute so that you can get that down. And that's the note. So if you did that while we went through it, fill in these blanks, then you'll want to submit that document, that CAMI document.
Is the owl 11% or 1?
Decimal 1. It's a decimal number, so it's I should have put a 0 here. 0.1%. So if you take each of these and divide by 10, it's decreasing by 10 as you go up. Now guys, remember, notes are the easiest way to get points towards your grades because the PowerPoint's right there and you just have to go through and fill in the blank. I know it's a little bit easier face-to-face because I can give you a paper copy and you can fill it in as we go along. But when you're at home, this is the easiest thing. So tomorrow, if after you finish up what we don't finish today, I would go back and if you missed some notes, get those turned in. It's going to be a real easy way to get your points back. All right, I'm going to get out of this. And what you're going to do is, I'm just going to go to modules. It just is simpler. You can probably click on the next button. I'm going to go down here, and there is no video for today, but there's a food web activity. So I'm going to click here first, but I have it pulled up separate. So what I've done here is I've put a document here, and you're to go through this slideshow here, and you're going to fill in information about these organisms. So we'll see how I can do this. I may pull it out like I was showing you. So let me use my mouse. If I come up here, because for you, you can look up here. And so like this is the red drumfish. And so you're going to read this information and you're going to put some information related to how they get energy. So for the red drumfish, and I'm going to pull my document out, I'm going to type on here. All right, so while that's loading, it says here, and I can take this off, I guess, since nobody's here. The red drumfish, it's a redfish or a spot-tailed bass, or simply reds is what it's called. We don't need to know any of that. It can live up to 40 years old. That has nothing to do with energy. Unless they get caught by a fisherman, they are very popular game fish. They love to eat smaller fish like menhaden. So I would probably write that down. So I'm going to get a text box and I'm going to write down eats smaller fish. And I don't know if we need to know the name or not, but I'm going to put menhaden. All right, I'm going to keep reading. And can even be known to eat small crabs and shrimp that inhabit the estuaries where they live. So I'm going to say eats small crabs and shrimp. All right. So I didn't need to put everything. I'm wanting to know what they eat, how they're getting their how are they getting their energy? All right, so now this is where it's going to be tricky because I'm over here. And when I click over here, it's going to go away. All right, so on the next slide, I have a dolphin. So I'm going to go pull my, I don't know which one. Oh, not that one, this one. I'll pull this up and I'm gonna see if it's a dolphin here. Well, no, stingray is next, but here's dolphin. So I can put a text box here and I can now read this information. Now, if you wanna watch that video, you can. I wouldn't do it right now where we can hear it, but you can scan that or click here, or I don't know if it's clickable now, but you can highlight it. So dolphins are some of the most interesting creatures. They can always be found swimming along coastal marshes. They form very tight bonds. They care for the elderly and sick, much like humans. None of that has to do with energies. Only one side of the dolphin's brain sleeps at a time, so the other can stay awake and keep them breathing. They eat 25 to 50 pounds of small and large fish a day, such as menhaden and red fish. So I can put here, eat 20 to 50 pounds, 20 to 50 pounds of small, what did it say? And large fish a day. And notice that menhaden came again, and that red fish. So that's all you're looking for. What is it that they eat? You're going to do this for each of these items here. This is why I'm having you work on it today, and then you work on it tomorrow. Then part 2 here is you're going to create a food web. All right, so what you're going to do is, out of these things listed here, what are the producers? Okay, whichever one's the producers, you can take that name. So I'll go ahead and tell you salt marsh grass is probably one of them. There may be some others. You can do a search down here on media. So if I go here to add media, so I'm on this page right here, and I go add media, I can search with the G, and I can put salt marsh grass. Well, if I click in it and type, and I don't care which, pick a picture. I'm just gonna take the first one that comes up, select, and it may come up real big, but I want it kind of down to the bottom, so I'm gonna drag it down. All right, and I'm gonna make it smaller. And if you wanna label it, you can, so that you remember what it is. So making it smaller. So then you can go back to your text box, and underneath here, you can label it salt marsh grass. When you get all the pictures, then you can use the drawing tool. I don't know if you can get an arrow. Yeah, you can insert lines, but I really need an arrow. So I don't know if you can, that just does a line. You really want an arrow. So you can insert by drawing a line with an arrow pointing to what eats the salt marshes. So any organism up here that eats salt marsh, you're going to draw a line from the salt marsh grass to that organism. Anything that makes its own food, you'd have kind of down at the bottom, and so forth. So you're creating your food web, and then you're answering these questions based on that. Based on what you did in that 1 through 4, and then 5 is you're picking one of the food chains within that has 3 organisms and drawing the trophic pyramid below. So you could use the shape to get a triangle and use the lines to divide it and the text box to write in it. So it's going to be like that last pyramid in your notes. So this is a 2-day activity. So spend some time on it today. I would at least get this part done today. And then tomorrow, you're going to spend time making your food web and answering your questions. If you want to get it all done today, that's fine. Then at least do your bell ringer tomorrow. To be counted present for tomorrow, your bell ringer and this activity has to be submitted. What would be nice is if you are missing work that you go back and do that. Are there any questions? Ignore the
When is
bell.
our next block?
1:55, because this is third block, so it normally, we have lunch afterwards. So they've allowed, that extra 30 minutes there, so I think it's 1:55. But I believe Ms. Kruger sent out 2 different times, 1:55 and 2:00. So, she let us know that, you need to be on by 2 at the latest for your last block.
Okay.
So if there's no questions, you're free to sign off, but this part is due tomorrow. Yes? Somebody have a question?
No, I'm good.
I thought. So
I'm the only
this
one on
is-
here now.
Okay, this is due tomorrow. You have 2 days to work on it, but make sure you get the notes submitted today.
Okay, I'll try to.
And then work on any of the other notes and stuff. If you have time over the weekend, work on it. It's easy 20 points, okay? Just go
Alright.
through, especially week 7. You may not be able to get anything past weeks, but in week 7, at least go back and fill in anything you haven't done,
Okay.
okay?
All
All
right.
right, that's it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Mom, did you turn the camera off?